China launched more ships last year than every other country on Earth combined, not slightly more than double. And right now, nearly 7 out of every 10 new ships being ordered anywhere on the planet are being built in Chinese shipyards. We are talking about ships so massive that 3 football fields fit inside their length. Ships that carry enough oil to meet 10% of America's entire daily consumption in a single trip, one ship, one voyage. And the United States is watching all of this very carefully. Because this is not just a story about ships, it is a story about who controls how energy moves around the planet. The oil that heats homes, fuels planes, and powers factories does not teleport from one country to another. It travels by sea, and the sea is changing in ways most people have not noticed yet. By the end of this video, you will see the ocean completely differently. You will understand why the country that builds the ships does not just sell a product. It gains something far bigger and far more lasting than money. If this is the kind of story you are into, hit that like button right now. It genuinely takes a huge amount of work to put these together, and every like helps more than you know. And subscribe so you do not miss what is coming next, because this thread goes very deep. Let's start at the beginning. How one country took over the ocean. For a long time, shipbuilding was a 3-way race. Japan brought decades of experience and a reputation for craftsmanship so precise it was almost an art form. South Korea brought speed and technology, building ships faster than anyone thought possible. China brought scale, a massive workforce, endless steel, and an ambition to grow that did not slow down for anyone. The rest of the world looked at this and felt comfortable. 3 countries competing means no single country controls everything. That felt stable, it felt safe, and for a while it was. But China did not just get better at the same game everyone else was playing. It looked at the entire system, took it apart, and rebuilt it from scratch. New factories, new methods, new technology, new financing, all of it redesigned around one goal: build more ships faster, better, and cheaper than anyone else. 5 Chinese shipyards were producing 53.69 million deadweight tons of ships in a single year. That number represents more than 56% of everything built anywhere on Earth. South Korea, which was neck and neck with China just a decade earlier, was watching from far behind. Japan had fallen even further back. The 3-way race quietly became a solo sprint, but the order books told the most important part of the story. Nearly 7 out of every 10 new ships being ordered anywhere in the world were going to Chinese yards. That is not just today's market. That is a preview of the future. The ships sailing in 2040, 2050, the ones still crossing oceans when today's teenagers are raising their own kids. Those ships are being designed, ordered, and built in China right now. When you control what gets built today, you control how the world moves tomorrow. But to really feel the weight of that, you first need to understand what these ships actually are. Because the word ship does not do them justice. A moving city made of steel, a very large crude carrier which the industry just calls a VLCC, is one of the biggest moving objects ever built by human hands. Stretch it out and it runs about 330 m from one end to the other. That is longer than 3 football fields placed end to end. Its deck is about 60 m wide enough that you could lay a multi-story building sideways across it and it would fit with room to spare. Inside, it holds around 2 million barrels of crude oil in a single trip. Here is what that actually means. The United States uses about 20 million barrels of oil every single day. One of these ships carries roughly 10% of that. One ship, one voyage. The steel that goes into building just one of these vessels weighs about 55,000 tons. That is the same as roughly 7 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other. And every single cut, every weld, every joint across all of that metal has to be close to perfect. Not good enough, close to perfect. Because the ocean does not forgive mistakes. North Atlantic waves can bend steel beams. Pacific storms have swallowed ships whole. And inside the hull, 2 million barrels of oil does not sit still. It sloshes, it surges, it slams against the walls with every wave, pushing outward from the inside with a force that beats on the structure continuously for decades. A ship like this has to survive all of that every single day for 25 to 30 years. And somehow China can build one of these from raw steel plates to a sea-ready vessel in under 2 years. When you first hear that, it sounds impossible, but once you see how they actually do it, it starts to make complete sense. The shipyard that changed everything. It starts with steel cutting because this is where the whole process either works or falls apart before the ship even begins to take shape. Every one of those 55,000 tons of steel plate gets fed into massive computer-controlled cutting machines. Every single cut is pre-programmed. The machines work with a precision that does not allow even a 2/4 of error. That strictness is not about being fancy. A small mistake at the cutting stage does not stay small. It moves forward through every step that follows. When thousands of pieces have to fit together later, a 4 in off on one plate becomes a centimeter off on an assembly, which becomes a structural weakness in the finished whole. So, the standard has to be nearly perfect from the very first cut. Now here is where things get genuinely interesting. Instead of building a ship the old way, starting from the bottom and slowly working upward one layer at a time in a process that used to take 4 or 5 years, Chinese engineers broke the whole thing apart on paper. First, they take the full blueprint of the ship and slice it into more than 100 giant sections. Each section weighs between 300 and 600 tons. Then they build each section completely separately, adding pipes, wiring, and protective coatings before it ever touches the main structure. Then massive cranes pick these finished sections up and lock them together like the world's most expensive, most enormous jigsaw puzzle. This is called modular construction. The core idea is straightforward but powerful. Instead of doing everything one step at a time, each step waiting on the last, you do dozens of things at the same time and bring them together at the end. A ship that used to take 4 or 5 years now gets done in under 2, and the quality does not drop. In many ways, it improves because each section can be inspected and fixed on its own before it becomes part of the whole. But here is the challenge that makes this hard to actually pull off. How do you take more than 100 giant steel blocks, each weighing hundreds of tons, and make sure they all line up with each other to within the width of a human hair? Because if they do not, the entire structure is at risk. That is where China's technology investment becomes hard to believe. Across the biggest Chinese shipyards, millions of tiny sensors are embedded throughout the construction environment. These sensors feed data through high-speed networks into AI systems that monitor every measurement, every position, every tiny movement in real time. If a section shifts even slightly out of alignment, the system flags it instantly. Not when a worker notices instantly. The deviations this system catches are not the size of a coin or a finger. They are the size of a human hair. In a structure this large, that level of detection is what keeps small errors from stacking into catastrophic ones. An error of a few millimeters on section 5 becomes a few centimeters by section 50 and a serious structural flaw by section 100. Catching it early is everything. And then there is the welding. Every joint on a ship like this has to hold for 25 to 30 years. Through salt water, through constant weight and pressure, through storms, through thousands of tons of shifting liquid. Through extreme temperatures, a human welder, no matter how skilled, gets tired. Speed shifts, pressure changes. Over thousands of hours of welding, even the best human welders produce small inconsistencies they cannot fully control. So China handed the most critical welding to robots. Laser welding arms work around the clock through steel plates up to 50 mm thick. Same temperature, same speed, same pressure for hours, for days without variation. The joints they produce are not just strong. They are consistently strong everywhere, every single time. Put it all together and you get a hull strong enough to carry 2 million barrels of oil across the world's most violent oceans for 3 decades without failing. But a hull is only half the story. What moves it is just as remarkable. The engine at the heart of it all. Moving a 300,000-ton ship across an entire ocean is not just a matter of dropping in a big engine and pointing it forward. The engineering involved operates at a scale most people never think about. The engines in these ships are built specifically to generate enormous force at very low speeds. They do not spin fast. They spin slowly and they push with incredible relentless power. Standing next to one of these engines in person, you are looking at something as tall as a 4-story building. The individual cylinders inside are wide enough for a full-grown engineer to walk into for maintenance. Power output reaches close to 100,000 horsepower. But raw power is not the whole point. The real goal is torque, steady, crushing, continuous force that travels down a long steel shaft and drives the propeller at the back of the ship. That propeller weighs over 100 tons and is cast from a single piece of a specialized metal that resists corrosion in seawater for decades. It is made as one piece on purpose to eliminate the joints and seams that would otherwise become weak spots over time. The shape of each propeller blade is designed using the same computer simulations used to design aircraft wings. Here is a number that shows how seriously this is taken. Improving the propeller's efficiency by just 1% saves up to 1.5 million in fuel every single year on a single ship across a fleet of hundreds of tankers sailing for 30 years. That kind of precision is not just engineering, it is economics at a scale that reshapes entire businesses. There is one more challenge worth understanding: vibration. When a massive engine is running at full power and 2 million barrels of oil is shifting inside the hull with every wave, the entire ship vibrates. On its own, vibration is manageable. The problem comes when the vibration frequency of the engine and the shifting frequency of the cargo sync up. When they do, they create a resonance effect similar to how the right musical note can shatter a wine glass. On a ship, that resonance does not break glass, it cracks welds. It fatigues steel. It quietly shortens the ship's life by years. To prevent this, the engine is never bolted directly onto the ship's frame. It sits on a damping system, a set of sophisticated shock absorbers designed to scatter those vibrations before they travel into the hull. The ship runs smoothly even through rough seas and keeps running that way for its full operational life. Now take all of that engineering and apply it to a completely new generation of ships, because China's newest tankers do not just refine what came before, they represent a whole new idea of what a ship is supposed to be. The ships nobody expected. The Shin Aden is a VLCC with a dead weight of around 300,000 tons. But what makes it unlike anything built before are the structures standing on its deck. Rigid sails 40 meters tall built from ultra-light carbon fiber rising off the hull of a ship the length of 3 football fields. These are not decorations. They are aerodynamically engineered structures that capture wind energy and feed it directly into the ship's propulsion. Under real-world conditions, they reduce fuel consumption by about 9.8%. That sounds modest until you do the math. On a ship that burns through vast quantities of fuel every single day, 9.8% saves millions of dollars per year per ship for 30 years of operation. Then there is the Yuan-Rui-Yang, which takes a completely different approach. This ship runs on a dual-fuel system that can switch between traditional diesel and liquefied natural gas, depending on what makes the most sense in whatever region it happens to be traveling through. It stretches 333 m long and 60 m wide. The dual-fuel system cuts carbon dioxide emissions by about 20% and slashes sulfur emissions by up to 85%. These are the most demanding environmental standards in the global shipping industry today. Standards that most older ships in the fleet cannot come close to meeting. And the newest generation of Chinese tankers is built to last 30 years instead of 25. 5 extra years sounds small on its own. For a ship carrying millions of barrels of oil per voyage, those 5 years represent hundreds of millions of dollars in additional value. For a shipping company owning a fleet of these vessels, it is the difference between a good investment and a generational one. When a ship is more fuel-efficient, cleaner, smarter, and longer-lasting than anything the competition offers at the same price, backed by flexible financing from state-owned banks that removes the biggest upfront cost barrier, the decision to order from Chinese yards stops being a preference and starts to feel almost inevitable. And as those orders pile up year after year, something much bigger than a business advantage begins to take shape. This is where the story gets really interesting. The quiet power behind the ships. Here is the part that most coverage of Chinese shipbuilding completely misses. The ships are impressive. The technology is remarkable. But the real power is not in the steel or the carbon fiber sails or the dual-fuel engines. The real power is in what all of those ships together represent in the global energy system. About 60% of all the oil traded anywhere in the world travels by sea, not by pipeline, not by truck or train, by ship. And the vast majority of those ships were built in China. That one fact creates a direct and permanent link between Chinese industrial output and the global flow of energy. Every barrel of oil that moves from the Gulf to Europe, from the Middle East to Asia, from West Africa to the United States, overwhelmingly travels on a ship that a Chinese yard built. But it goes further than just where the ships were made. When you build a ship, you do not just sell a product and walk away. You create a relationship that lasts for the entire operational life of that vessel. The shipping company that takes delivery of a Chinese-built tanker needs spare parts designed for that ship's specific systems. It needs technical support from engineers who understand how that ship was built. It needs maintenance, software updates and upgrades. All of that comes back to China over and over for 30 years. Chinese state-owned banks made this ecosystem even more powerful by changing the financial model entirely. The single biggest barrier to ordering a new ship has always been the size of the upfront cost. A VLCC costs hundreds of millions of dollars. Most shipping companies, even large ones, could not just write that check. Chinese banks came in with financing packages that spread the cost over time, with competitive rates and flexible terms that made ordering a new ship far more accessible than it had ever been before. Shipping companies from Greece, Norway, the Middle East, and across Asia started placing larger orders more frequently because the financial math suddenly worked in their favor. And every one of those orders deepened the long-term connection between those companies and the Chinese shipbuilding ecosystem. Now, think about where power in the global energy system has traditionally lived. For most of modern history, it sat with the countries that had oil in the ground, the nations that could turn a valve and move prices, the ones at the source. But oil in the ground does not go anywhere without ships to carry it. And ships do not exist without shipyards to build them. So if you control the means of transport, you hold a form of influence over global energy that does not require owning a single oil well. You do not need to be at the extraction end of the chain. You just need to be the one who decides what gets built, how many ships exist, and who can afford to order them. China is not setting production quotas. It is not drilling in the Gulf, but it is building the vessels that carry 60% of all the oil the world buys and sells. And the ships being ordered and built right now will still be sailing in 2055. The infrastructure being created today will define how energy moves around this planet for the next 30 years. It will still be operating when the next generation is making decisions about what comes after oil. That is not a shipbuilding story anymore. That is a story about who holds the quiet controls of the global economy, not loudly, not through pressure or force, through steel and robots and sails made of carbon fiber and financing terms that make it easier to say yes than to say no. And when you build enough of those ships for enough of the world over enough decades, the ocean starts to look different, less like a natural boundary between nations, more like a network that somebody built and somebody maintains and somebody more and more shapes. From raw steel plates to robotic welding arms, from carbon fiber sails to dual fuel engines, China did not just build the world's largest oil tankers. It built the system that builds them, finances them, and keeps them running for 30 years. And in doing so, it positioned itself at the center of how energy moves across this planet for decades to come. So here is the question worth sitting with. When the infrastructure that carries 60% of the world's oil is built by one country, maintained by one country, and financed by one country, does that country hold a kind of influence over global energy that nobody voted for and nobody can easily undo? Drop your answer in the comments. I genuinely want to know what you think. If this video was worth your time, hit like and subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss one of these. The next video pulls on this same thread in a direction you probably did not see coming.